My son left his 7-year-old daughter with a neighbor and flew off with his new wife, as if the child were an inconvenient piece of luggage that had failed to fit into the overhead compartment. Not for work, not for an emergency, not because there had been no other choice, but for a vacation, the kind of curated coastal escape with white linen shirts, expensive sunglasses, champagne glasses, sweating beside an infinity pool, and captions about finally getting real family time. I still remember the small blue suitcase sitting under the porch light when I arrived, its handle tilted at a crooked angle, one pink sock caught in the zipper, a stuffed rabbit wedged sideways in the front pocket as if some adult hand had shoved it there in a hurry, and my granddaughter, Lily, standing beside it with her shoulders in and her lower lip trembling, while she tried very hard not to cry, because she had already learned that tears made adults uncomfortable. She looked up at me with eyes too old for 7 and whispered, "Grandpa, am I not family?" I did not shout that night. I did not call my son and curse him. I did not threaten his wife. I did not throw my phone across the room or pound my fist against the steering wheel. I simply went quiet, and the older I get, the more I understand that silence can be more dangerous than rage, because rage spends itself quickly, but silence begins making decisions. By the time my son's return flight touched down 3 days later, by the time he turned his phone back on and sent me a message telling me not to make this a thing, he had already stepped outside the circle of protection he had spent his whole life assuming would always hold him. He did not know it yet. Men who inherit safety rarely notice the moment they lose it. My name is Jonathan Hale. I am 67 years old, and for nearly 3 decades I taught community economics at the University of Michigan before retiring in 2019, the same year I finally admitted that my knees had begun complaining about lecture halls more than my students complained about exams. I live in Ann Arbor, in a modest house with a tired green porch, a maple tree leaning east as if listening for weather, and a back fence I have been meaning to repair for 6 summers. The house is not grand, but it is steady, and steadiness matters to me. I have always believed that ordinary rituals keep people from falling apart when grief, pride, money, and disappointment begin pulling at them from different directions. My wife, Evelyn, died in 2016 after a cancer so fast and unfair that even now my mind refuses to place it properly in time. 1 month she was telling me to stop overwatering the basil on the kitchen windowsill, and the next month I was standing beside a hospital bed, listening to machines count what was left. After she died, the house grew larger in the way empty houses do. Her mug stayed in the cabinet. Her blue scarf stayed on the hook near the garage door for almost a year. I kept the furniture where it was because moving, it felt like admitting the world had permission to continue without her. Routine became a rope. Breakfast at 7, mail at 10, walk after lunch, bills on Friday, church when I could tolerate people saying she was in a better place. The routines did not heal me, but they kept the floor from opening. My son Daniel grew up in that house. He was bright, restless, charming when charm served him and defensive when it did not. As a boy, he always needed witnesses. If he won a spelling bee, he wanted the certificate framed by dinner. If he failed a test, he wanted to explain the teacher's bias before anyone saw the grade. He did not lie in crude ways when he was young. He edited reality until it better supported the version of himself he needed others to see. I saw it early, and because I was a professor and believed language could fix almost anything, I tried to correct him with long conversations about responsibility, character, and the difference between image and achievement. Evelyn, softer than I was but rarely fooled, would sometimes wait until he went upstairs and then say, "John, you are teaching him how to defend a thesis when what he needs is to learn how to sit with shame." I dismissed that at the time because I thought shame was something good parenting prevented. I know better now. A child who never learns how to survive shame becomes an adult who will make everyone else pay to keep him from feeling it. Daniel married young the first time. Her name was Claire, and she was gentle in a way that made people underestimate her until they needed her. She had brown hair, a quiet laugh, and the kind of patience that frightened me, because patient people often wait too long before admitting they are being consumed. Lily was born 5 years into their marriage, a small, furious baby with Evelyn's eyes and Claire's mouth, and I fell in love with her so quickly it embarrassed me. I had been a father before, but becoming a grandfather after losing my wife felt like someone had opened a window in a house I thought would remain sealed forever. Daniel loved Lily then, or at least he loved the feeling of being seen as a father. He posted photographs of tiny hands around his finger, videos of bedtime stories, pictures of himself carrying her in a front pack through farmers' markets. But fatherhood, real fatherhood, is not the photograph. It is the second fever at 3 in the morning. It is the school form you complete correctly. It is remembering which stuffed animal cannot go in the washing machine because the child believes it has feelings. It is showing up when nobody claps. Daniel liked the applause. Claire handled the invisible work. The divorce was not a surprise to those of us who were willing to look directly at it. Daniel called it a mutual growth decision, which was the sort of phrase he favored when truth sounded too plain. Claire called me once after the papers were filed, not to complain, not to ask for money, but to tell me she hoped I would stay close to Lily. There was strain in her voice, but also dignity. "She loves you," Claire said, "and Daniel is still her father. I want that to work if it can, if it can." That was Claire's way. She always left space for someone to become better than they had been. I promised I would stay close. 6 months later, Claire was gone, killed on a wet October evening by a delivery truck that ran a red light on Washtenaw Avenue. After the funeral, Daniel stood at my kitchen sink, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot, and said he did not know how to do this alone. I put my hand on his shoulder and told him nobody does. That was true. It was also the first of many times I mistook his helplessness for humility. After Claire's death, Lily became careful. That is the word that followed her everywhere. Careful with her crayons, careful with her shoes, careful with adults' moods. She apologized if a spoon slipped from her hand. She apologized if she needed help opening a juice box. She apologized when she laughed too loudly during a movie, then covered her mouth as if joy might be inconsiderate. She played violin with more feeling than accuracy and read above her grade level. But none of that worried me as much as the speed with which she learned to ask whether something was okay before allowing herself to want it. "Can I sit here, Grandpa? Can I have more potatoes, or is that too much? Can I call you if Daddy is busy?" 7 years old and already negotiating space in the world as if love were a room that could fill up without her. Daniel met Vanessa Monroe at a donor networking event for entrepreneurs. She was polished, beautiful, and socially fluent in a way that made her seem warm from a distance and cold up close. She had bright blonde hair always arranged, as if the wind itself had signed a contract, pale nails, expensive shoes, and a voice that softened whenever strangers entered the room. She smiled without giving anything away. The first time Daniel brought her to dinner, she complimented my house in the tone one uses for a charming museum, and asked Lily 3 questions that sounded rehearsed. "What grade are you in? Do you like school? Isn't it nice that your daddy has someone to help him now?" Lily looked confused by that last one. I saw it. Daniel did not. Or perhaps he did, and looked away because Vanessa was watching him. From the beginning, Vanessa preferred a version of Daniel that did not include history. She liked the startup founder, the widower father with a tragic past, the man rebuilding himself into something sleek and aspirational. She did not like the grief that made him ordinary. She did not like Claire's photographs in the hallway. She did not like Lily's resemblance to her mother. She never said those things directly. People like Vanessa rarely reveal cruelty all at once. They release it in measured drops, small enough that each incident can be defended as misunderstanding, but steady enough that the room eventually changes temperature. She moved Claire's framed photograph from the living room mantel to Lily's bedroom, so Lily can have something personal. She referred to Daniel and Lily's life before her as the old arrangement. She corrected Lily's posture at dinner by touching 2 fingers to the child's shoulder blade and whispering, "Pretty girls don't fold into themselves." When Lily cried at a school concert because she missed her mother, Vanessa smiled tightly and told Daniel later, loud enough for me to hear, "I understand trauma, but we cannot let the child weaponize sadness every time attention moves away from her." The child. That was how she said it when she forgot to perform. Daniel married Vanessa 2 years ago in a vineyard ceremony with white roses, and no photograph of Claire anywhere visible. Lily wore a pale blue dress and stood beside me during the vows, holding my index finger with both hands. At the reception, Vanessa's maid of honor gave a speech about chosen family, fresh starts, and building a life unburdened by yesterday. Daniel laughed when everyone laughed. Lily leaned against my knee and asked if fresh starts meant forgetting people. I told her no. I wanted that to be true. Daniel's business, Hale Creative Strategy, looked ambitious on paper and hollow underneath. It was a marketing startup built around personal branding, digital campaigns, and what he called narrative architecture. He used phrases that made investors feel they were buying into something intellectual, rather than paying for ad copy. The company had glossy decks, a rented office, a social media presence, and debt hiding behind confidence. 6 figures at first, then more. I had helped once in 2020 after Claire died, when Daniel came to me with projections, a restructuring plan, and the kind of exhausted sincerity that makes a father reach for a check before he reaches for skepticism. I loaned him money. He said he would treat it like a lesson. I did not ask for repayment. That was my mistake, not because the money mattered most, but because uncollected debts can teach the wrong lesson to people already inclined to believe forgiveness is the same as permission. Most people in my neighborhood would not guess that I had significant assets. I drive an old Subaru with a cracked cup holder. I buy coffee in bulk. I still compare grocery prices. The bulk of my estate sits inside the Hale Family Trust, established in 2012, when Evelyn and I were healthy enough to think we were being practical rather than prophetic. Conservative investments, municipal bonds, long-term equity holdings, a few rental properties managed by professionals, because I had no desire to become a landlord in retirement. Around $5 million, depending on market swings and interest rates. The trust was intended to protect the next generation, especially Lily. Daniel always assumed he was the primary beneficiary. He never asked to read the documents. He never asked what conditions existed. He assumed, and assumption is the softest bed entitlement ever sleeps in. In 2018, 2 years after Evelyn died, and 4 years before everything broke open, I signed an addendum after watching a colleague's grandson burn through an inheritance, while his children went without stability. The clause was simple: any beneficiary found by trust review to have engaged in willful neglect of a minor, financial exploitation tied to caregiving obligations, or sustained conduct contrary to the welfare of a dependent child, could be suspended or removed. I wrote it with no particular person in mind. At least that is what I told myself then. The night Lily asked whether she was family, I drove her home through streets washed gold by porch lights and late summer humidity. She sat in the back seat with the blue suitcase beside her, one hand resting on it as if it might vanish if she let go. Elena Brooks, the neighbor Daniel had left her with, stood on her porch when I arrived. Elena was 73, widowed, kind but not soft, the sort of woman who watered her flowers at dawn and noticed every car that did not belong. She hugged Lily before letting her go, but her eyes found mine over the child's head and held there. There was an apology in them, and something heavier than apology. "Patrick," she said softly, using my middle name by mistake because she was rattled, "I am sorry. I thought he had spoken to you." He had not. Lily's suitcase wheels clicked over the walkway. Elena lowered her voice. This is not the first time she has been left with me longer than planned. I felt the night become very still. "Tell me." She looked toward Lily, who was trying to lift the suitcase into my trunk though it was too heavy. "Not here," I nodded. At my house, Lily moved through the rooms with the exhausted politeness of a guest, though she had slept there 100 times. "Do I put my suitcase by the couch?" she asked. "For now," I said. "We will take it upstairs in a little while." She nodded as if I had given her instructions for a test. I made toast with butter and honey, because she said she was not hungry, but watched the toaster with hollow concentration. She ate half a slice, then folded herself onto the sofa with the rabbit under her chin. I covered her with Evelyn's old quilt. She fought sleep for nearly 20 minutes, eyelids dropping, then snapping open whenever a car passed outside. Children who feel safe do not monitor doorways while falling asleep. I sat in the armchair across from her until her breathing settled into the shallow rhythm of temporary surrender. Only then did I open the trust documents. The folder was in my study, in the second drawer beneath old tax files and a packet of Evelyn's handwritten recipes. I placed it on the kitchen table beside a yellow legal pad and read the clause again. Willful neglect of a minor, sustained conduct contrary to welfare, beneficiary suspension pending review, removal upon substantiation. The legal language was clean, but my hands felt dirty touching it. I had written the clause to protect children from reckless adults. I had never imagined using it against my own son. The difference between principle and action is flesh. On paper, accountability sounds noble. At a kitchen table, with your granddaughter asleep in the next room and your son somewhere over the Pacific celebrating real family time, accountability feels like betrayal traveling in both directions. My phone buzzed at 11:06. "Daniel." I let it ring twice before answering. "Dad," he said too quickly, "do not make this a thing. That sentence, more than any apology could have, told me where he stood. Not "is Lily okay?" Not "thank you for picking her up?" Not "I should have called you." Do not make this a thing. I looked toward the living room, where Lily had shifted in her sleep, and pulled the quilt up to her cheek. She asked me if she was family, I said. A pause. Faint music in the background. A woman laughing somewhere near him. "She is 7, he said. She says emotional things. Did you tell her this was real family time?" That was Vanessa's caption. Did she hear it? Dad, his voice tightened. "She was with Elena. Elena loves her. It is 3 days. Did you ask Lily if she wanted to stay behind? She does not understand adult plans." There it was. Not yes, not no. An erasure disguised as maturity. I waited, but he filled the silence with irritation instead of remorse. "You are doing that thing where you turn everything into a moral lecture. Vanessa and I needed time. We have been under pressure. The business is under pressure. Lily is fine. She is asleep on my sofa holding a rabbit like someone left at a station." He exhaled sharply. "I am not doing this right now. We are boarding a morning excursion in 6 hours. I will call when we get back." "No," I said quietly. "You will call when you understand what happened. Dad, seriously, do not embarrass us. Vanessa's followers are watching all this." Followers. That was the word that ended the call for me. I hung up without saying goodbye. The next morning, I called Elena and asked if she would come over after breakfast. She arrived with a folder of her own, which should have warned me that her kindness had been carrying weight for some time. She sat at my kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a mug of tea she did not drink, and told me there had been at least 2 prior evenings when Lily knocked on her door because Daniel and Vanessa were out later than promised. Once after a brand dinner in Detroit, once after a fundraising event where Vanessa insisted children were not part of the aesthetic. Elena had not wanted to interfere. "I told myself families have arrangements," she said. "I told myself maybe I was being old-fashioned. I kept notes because something about it felt wrong, but I hoped I would never need them." She gave me dates, times, screenshots of texts from Daniel asking her to keep Lily just another hour, then 3 hours, then overnight. She had doorbell footage from the night before. Daniel's SUV pulling up, the blue suitcase placed near the porch, a quick hug, Vanessa remaining in the passenger seat, face lit by her phone. Daniel checking his watch, Lily turning once as he walked away. No backward glance. I watched the footage 3 times. By the third, I no longer saw a lapse. I saw a pattern trying to look like inconvenience. I called Dr. Melissa Ward, Lily's pediatrician, with care. I did not accuse. I did not demand private records. I had no right to demand. I said Lily had been staying with me and seemed anxious. Dr. Ward listened in the careful way doctors do when legal and moral obligations begin sharing a room. "She has shown indicators," she said. "Sleep disruption, excessive apologizing, somatic complaints before transitions. Nothing dramatic alone, but children do not develop that kind of vigilance in a vacuum." In a vacuum. The phrase stayed with me for hours. Neglect, I realized, was not always an empty refrigerator or a locked door. Sometimes it was a child learning that adult love had scheduling conflicts. By noon, I had printed screenshots of Vanessa's vacation post. Champagne by a pool. Daniel's arm around her waist. A caption reading "finally uninterrupted." Another reading "real family time begins when we choose peace." Beneath it, comments from strangers. "You deserve this. Protect your marriage. Blended families are hard." One comment from Vanessa herself, replying to a follower who asked where Lily was. "With a neighbor she adores. Adults need oxygen too." I printed that one twice. Paper forces clarity. Screens invite denial because images disappear with a thumb swipe. Paper sits there and asks whether you are still willing to pretend. At 2:30, I called Cole Bennett, my attorney and the trustee advisor who had handled the Hale Family Trust for more than a decade. Cole was not warm, but he was reliable. And in legal matters, reliability is a form of warmth. "Hypothetically," I began, "if a beneficiary leaves a minor child with a neighbor without formal guardianship, written authorization, or emergency necessity, and there is evidence of repeated incidents, what threshold would activate the neglect clause?" Cole was silent for 2 beats. "It is not hypothetical, is it?" "No, send me everything." I sent the footage, Elena's notes, Daniel's texts, Dr. Ward's general observations, Vanessa's posts, and my own timeline. At 5:47, he called back. "Jonathan," he said, "you may not need a criminal finding. The clause is based on trust review and substantiation by evidence. not conviction. There is enough here to initiate preliminary notice. I closed my eyes. Across the living room, Lily was sitting on the floor, drawing a house with 3 windows and no people in it. If I initiate, I asked, what happens? Automatic beneficiary status review. Financial institutions linked to trust expectation may receive risk notice depending on prior disclosures. Daniel's credit arrangements could be affected if they rely on future beneficiary representations. I opened my eyes. He has represented expected inheritance. I cannot know without review, but many founders use anticipated trust status informally with lenders and investors. I thought of Daniel's startup decks, his confidence, the way he said family office backing without ever asking me whether such backing existed. File the preliminary notice, I said. Cole did not ask me to repeat it. The administrative storm began quietly. Cole filed. The trust's internal compliance mechanism acknowledged. Notices moved. Systems updated. No sirens. No dramatic knock. Just digital entries and legal language sliding into place. Daniel, still away, sent another text that night. Dad, seriously, do not embarrass us. We are trying to enjoy the first peaceful trip we have had in years. Lily will forget this by next week if you stop making it traumatic. I read that sentence several times. Lily will forget. It occurred to me then that Daniel had built much of his adult life around the hope that other people would forget what he preferred not to remember. He returned 2 days later, sunburned across the nose, expensive sunglasses hooked on his shirt, the faint smell of airport and resort sunscreen clinging to him like evidence. He knocked hard, 3 sharp strikes, the way he had as a teenager when arriving home after curfew, already angry enough to avoid apologizing. I opened the door before the 3rd knock completed. Where is Lily? He asked. In the backyard. Good. He moved to step past me. I did not move. That alone surprised him. Before you see her, we need to talk. He laughed once, not because anything was funny, but because contempt needed sound. Dad, no. I told you. We are not turning 3 days into a courtroom. This is not about 3 days. His face tightened. You always do this. You take one situation and attach a theory to it. I attach patterns to patterns. Elena is practically family. Then why did Lily ask me if she was not family? His mouth opened, then closed. The old Daniel, the boy at the math table preparing his explanation before admitting the grade, appeared in the set of his jaw. Vanessa posted something stupid. That is not neglect. Leaving your child with a neighbor and flying away without telling her grandfather is not a caption problem. He stepped into the hallway anyway, forcing me either to block him physically or let him pass. I let him pass because I wanted to see what he would do when he saw the evidence. The kitchen table held the printed timeline, screenshots, transfer records, notes, and trust documents. Daniel stopped when he saw them. For the first time since entering, his confidence flickered. He picked up a screenshot of Vanessa's caption and dropped it as if the paper were dirty. You are building a case. I am building clarity. His eyes moved to the section showing missed child support transfers after Claire's death, 3 months totaling $9,400, which he had told me were temporary cash flow issues while the startup restructured. Why is that there? He demanded. Because support gaps are part of the pattern. I paid eventually. After reminders, I was grieving, so was Lily. His face reddened. Do not use her against me. I looked at him then, really looked at the expensive watch, the resort tan, the defensiveness already searching for a better costume. You left her behind and called the trip real family time. I am not using her. I am finally listening to her. From the backyard came the thin, careful sound of a violin scale. One note wavered, corrected, then continued. Daniel turned toward it, and for a moment I saw something like pain cross his face. He started toward the back door, but Lily opened it before he reached the handle. She stood there with the violin bow in one hand, hair escaping from a loose braid, cheeks flushed from the sun. Dad, she said, no running, no leap into his arms, just the word cautious and testing. Daniel softened instantly, or performed softness so automatically that even he may not have known which it was. Hey, Peanut. He crouched and pulled a small bracelet from his pocket. I brought you something from Cabo. Lily looked at the bracelet, tiny shells on a gold thread, then looked at me, then back at him. Do I have to go back today? She asked. The question landed harder than anything I had put on the table. Daniel's smile stiffened. Of course you are coming home. Why would you not? Lily's fingers tightened around the bow. Because I did not know if I was supposed to. Daniel shot me a look. What have you been saying to her? Less than she has been feeling. Dad, answer her. He crouched lower. Lily, you are my daughter. You are always supposed to be with me. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. Then why did you leave me with Mrs. Brooks when you went with Vanessa? Daniel swallowed. It was an adult trip, because I am not real family. No, too fast. No, that is not what I meant. What did you mean? 7 years old, standing in a kitchen with adults and legal documents, asking the one question no marketing strategy could reframe. Daniel looked at me as if I had staged a trial. I had not. Children do not need coaching to identify abandonment. They need permission to say it. Daniel left that day without taking Lily, not because he agreed, but because Cole's preliminary notice had already reached his attorney, and fear had entered the room through a door pride could not close. That evening, Cole called. They have retained separate counsel. Vanessa's attorney is coordinating with Daniel's. They are requesting a psychological evaluation of you. I sat at the kitchen table, the same place where Evelyn once corrected student essays for me when I fell behind. On what basis? Age-related decline, financial manipulation, possible coercive control through trust assets. I almost laughed, not because it was absurd, though it was, but because it was predictable. When people cannot defend what they did, they often attack the witness. Let them request, I said. We will respond. Jonathan, Cole said more gently than usual, they are going to make this ugly. I looked toward the hallway where Lily had left her blue suitcase still unpacked. It already is. The next week was the beginning of the suffocating middle, though I did not know it then. Legal conflict does not feel like battle while it is happening. It feels like waiting. Waiting for calls, waiting for filings, waiting for children to ask questions you cannot answer fully, waiting for your own certainty to return after doubt slips under the door. Daniel's first counterattack arrived in a letter stating that I had become emotionally unstable since Evelyn's death, that I had long resented his remarriage, that I was using Lily to punish Vanessa, and that my trust actions represented elder rigidity and possible cognitive decline. Vanessa submitted a statement written in polished cruelty. She described herself as a loving stepmother, navigating a difficult blended family dynamic, complicated by Jonathan Hale's possessiveness over the child, and unresolved grief regarding his deceased wife and former daughter-in-law. She wrote that Lily had been safe, loved, and placed with a trusted neighbor, and that Daniel and Vanessa's brief marital retreat had been recommended by a couples coach as necessary for family stability. She included no mention of the caption, no mention of Lily's question, no mention of the prior evenings. Cruelty, when educated, learns formatting. Daniel came again after his bank froze his personal line of credit. This time he did not wear sunglasses. This time he looked as if the sunburn had faded into something gray beneath his skin. What did you do? He asked the moment I opened the door. I followed the trust clause. My bank just suspended a $600,000 line pending beneficiary review. Then you used expected trust access as collateral. Informally, that is still reliance. He stepped inside, pacing the living room. Investors are calling. Vanessa is furious. My CFO says we could breach payroll if the bridge funding collapses. That sounds serious. He stopped. Do you hear yourself? This is my company. Lily is your daughter. I know that. Do you? He rubbed both hands over his face, suddenly looking younger and older at once. I thought she would be fine. Alina is safe. It was 3 days. Vanessa needed. He stopped. I waited. Needed what? He looked away. She needed not to feel like Claire was still in the marriage. The cruelty of that sentence was quieter than Vanessa's statements, but more revealing. And your solution was to remove Claire's child from the picture. That is not fair. It is precise. His face changed then. Pain, shame, anger, all fighting for control. You do not understand what it is like to try to rebuild a life with someone who constantly feels second. I understand you married a woman who sees your daughter as competition. He stepped toward me, voice lowering. Do not talk about my wife like that. Then do not let your wife treat your child like a leftover. He flinched as if slapped. Some truths hit harder when spoken plainly, because everyone in the room has been avoiding them. Lily heard enough. She appeared at the stairs, not dramatic, not crying, just small in socks, and holding the stuffed rabbit by one ear. Dad, she said, did Vanessa not want me to go? Daniel turned, and the whole house seemed to hold its breath. Lily, sweetheart, grown-up things are complicated. Did she not want me? No, that is not. Did you? He closed his eyes briefly. I wanted you safe, but not there. No one moved. She looked at him, then at me, then down at the rabbit. I do not want to make Vanessa sad. That was when I felt the deepest anger of my life. Not the hot kind, the cold kind that comes when a child has been trained to protect the feelings of adults who failed to protect hers. Daniel heard it too. I saw it land. He crouched, but she stepped backward by half an inch. Barely anything. Enough. You are not responsible for Vanessa's feelings, he said, and for once the sentence sounded like something he had not planned. Lily nodded without believing him. Dr. Ward's report to Child Protective Services arrived without my request. That mattered legally and morally. I had initiated trust review, not state intervention. But once a pediatrician documents anxiety linked to potential neglect, systems move. A social worker named Mara Alvarez came to my door 3 days later. She was in her early 40s, with tired eyes that missed nothing and a calm voice that made no promises. "I am not here to accuse anyone," she said. "I am here to understand." She spoke to Lily alone in the front room while I sat in the kitchen listening to the low murmur of voices and hating every adult who had made such a conversation necessary. When Mara joined me afterward, she placed her clipboard on the table and folded her hands. "She does not describe fear in the direct sense," Mara said carefully. "She describes confusion. She describes trying to be good so she is not sent away. She says she is worried that if she cries too much, her father will need another adult trip." I gripped my coffee mug so hard my knuckles ached. "What happens now? A structured evaluation. Temporary recommendations. The court will consider consistency, safety, emotional availability, and parental insight." "Insight," I repeated. Myra nodded. "The hardest thing to measure, and often the most important." The first preliminary hearing took place in a beige courtroom with fluorescent lights and a flag standing limp near the judge's bench. Nothing about it matched the violence of what it contained. No music, no dramatic entrance, just people with folders determining where a child would sleep and whether a father's inheritance could be suspended for conduct he still wanted to call a mistake. Judge Raymond Cole was in his 60s, square-faced, patient in the way of men who have spent years watching families turn love into evidence. Daniel sat across the aisle in a dark suit without a tie. Vanessa did not come. Her absence spoke with perfect clarity. Daniel's attorney argued that this was an isolated lapse, distorted by an overbearing grandfather. Cole Bennett presented Elena's sworn statement, doorbell footage, prior incidents, missed support transfers, Dr. Ward's observations, and Vanessa's public post. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Patterns do not require volume once arranged correctly. Judge Cole asked Daniel whether he had left Lily with a non-legal guardian while traveling out of state. Daniel said yes, but only for 3 days. The judge asked whether he had provided written authorization, medical consent, emergency plan, or family notification. Daniel's attorney tried to intervene. The judge repeated the question. Daniel said no. The judge asked whether prior overnight care extensions had occurred. Daniel hesitated. Elena's affidavit sat in the file like a stone. "Yes," he said, "but those were different." "Different how?" the judge asked. Daniel did not have an answer that survived the room. When the trust clause came up, Daniel's attorney argued financial coercion. Judge Cole tapped the document with one finger. "The trust instrument appears to condition beneficiary status on conduct. Suspension pending review is not punitive if the condition is triggered by evidence." Daniel turned toward me then, betrayal burning through his restraint. "You kept records," he whispered. I looked at him and felt older than I had that morning. "I kept attention." The judge issued a temporary order. Lily would remain with me pending full review. Daniel would receive supervised visitation. The trust beneficiary suspension would remain active pending substantiation. Not permanent removal. Not yet. But enough. Outside the courthouse, Daniel stood beside his car staring at his phone as message after message arrived. "Bank, investor, CFO, attorney, Vanessa." I watched his face as the structural consequences reached him. Emotional consequences he could deflect. Financial consequences entered through systems he respected. He called that night. "They pulled the line," he said. "Investors want to know if suspension is permanent. Is that why you called? What do you want from me?" His voice cracked on the last word, whether from anger or fear I could not tell. I closed my eyes. "I want you to become someone your daughter does not feel abandoned by. You are destroying my life." "No," I said. "I am separating it from mine." The supervised visits were worse than any courtroom. Courtrooms have structure. Visits have pauses. The first one took place in a community center room with beige chairs, a plastic table, and a window that looked out on a parking lot. Lily sat with her violin case in her lap like a shield. Daniel arrived with a gift bag, which Mara immediately told him to leave outside until the end. He looked embarrassed, then irritated, then tried to hide both. I waited in the hallway because protocol required distance. Through the narrow glass panel, I watched him attempt fatherhood without performance. He leaned forward too much. Lily leaned back. He smiled too brightly. She answered politely. He said, "I missed you, Peanut." She said, "I was at Grandpa's, not I missed you too." Not because she wanted to hurt him, because children who are unsure of safety often become precise. He told her he was fixing things. She asked if fixing things meant Vanessa would like her now. He looked toward the door as if someone might help him. No one did. After the visit, Mara told me Lily was guarded, not hostile. "Guarded is information," she said. I drove home with Lily in the back seat. She was quiet until we turned onto my street. "Is Dad mad at me?" she asked. I pulled over because I did not trust myself to answer while driving. "No," I said, turning to face her. "He is not mad at you. None of this is because of you." She looked at the floor mat. Vanessa said grown-ups need oxygen. I swallowed. "Children are not the opposite of oxygen." She thought about that. "Then what am I?" I did not give a clever answer. "Children deserve better than metaphors when their world is unstable. You are a child who deserves to be loved without being made to feel in the way." She nodded slowly, but belief would take longer than hearing. The middle month stretched like a hallway without doors. Daniel's company began to collapse in stages. First the credit line suspension, then investor withdrawal, then delayed payroll, then a quiet resignation from his CFO, then office downsizing presented publicly as strategic consolidation. Vanessa's behavior sharpened as the money moved. She began posting less, but messaging more. Long texts to Daniel that he later showed in court reluctantly. "Your father is trying to erase me. If you let that old man win, you will lose everything. I did not marry you to live like a divorced warehouse manager." She called Lily manipulative in one message and emotionally trained by Jonathan in another. Daniel did not defend Lily strongly at first. He wrote things like, "I am handling it, and please do not escalate." Then, after one particularly ugly night during a temporary home visit, Lily called me at 9:18, whispering from what sounded like a hallway. "Grandpa, they are arguing." In the background, Vanessa's voice sliced through the walls. "Your father ruined us because you let that child run the house." Daniel's voice answered low, strained, trying to contain rather than confront. Lily whispered, "She said I ruined the trip." I asked her to put Daniel on. There was shuffling, a muffled protest. Then Daniel came to the phone breathing hard. "What?" he snapped. "She called because she is scared. We are not fighting. I can hear you." Silence. Then quieter. "Investors pulled out." "And Lily, what about her? Is she responsible?" He inhaled sharply. "No." "Then lower your voice and act like it." That call changed something. Not enough to fix him, enough to crack the defensive shell. 2 days later, at an emergency session requested after Dr. Ward documented Lily's increased anxiety, Daniel appeared without Vanessa. He looked wrecked. His hair was uncombed, his suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow. Judge Cole asked whether financial stressors had entered the home environment. Daniel said yes. Whether arguments occurred within Lily's hearing. Yes. Whether Vanessa had made statements suggesting Lily was responsible for marital strain. His attorney touched his arm, but Daniel answered anyway. Yes. The room shifted. It was the first time he had chosen truth over positioning, while it still cost him something. Judge Cole transferred temporary legal guardianship to me for 12 months, with structured visitation for Daniel contingent upon parenting rehabilitation, therapy participation, and demonstrated residential stability. "This is not punishment," the judge said. "This is protection." Daniel bowed his head. Outside the courtroom, he said, "You win. This is not a game." He looked at me with a bitterness so tired it almost resembled grief. "I lost everything." "No," I said. "You lost access to money. There is a difference." He looked away, but he heard me. The foreclosure notice became official 3 weeks later. Daniel did not tell me first. Cole did, because property records move faster than pride. Daniel and Vanessa's lifestyle house, the one used in investor decks and social posts, had been financed beyond reason, its mortgage dependent on business optimism and future trust assumptions. Without the line of credit and investor confidence, it folded. Vanessa left before the final notice. She called it taking space, then irreconcilable lifestyle differences. She did not request custody or visitation. Lily asked once whether Vanessa was mad at her. I said Vanessa was responsible for Vanessa. Lily accepted that faster than I expected, which told me she had been waiting for someone to say it. Daniel came to my door carrying a cardboard box, not luggage, a box of office remains, a framed photo from his first investor round, a mug with the company logo, a folded certificate from a startup accelerator. He stood on the porch and said before I could speak, "I am not here to ask for money." I believed him. That surprised me. "I start the parenting program Monday," he added. 9 months, good. He looked past me into the living room where Lily was practicing a slow scale. Her bowing had improved. She no longer attacked notes as if apologizing to them. "She will not look at me," he said. "She is protecting herself," he nodded. For once, he did not argue with the wording. Judge Cole said financial power does not define fatherhood. He is right. Daniel laughed without humor. "I spent years thinking your trust was a safety net." He looked down at the box in his hands. Turns out it was a mirror. That was the first sentence that sounded like reflection instead of strategy. A year passed in court dates, therapy sessions, visitation reports, school concerts, parenting assignments, and small shifts no legal document could fully capture. Lily stopped sleeping with the blue suitcase beside her bed. Then she moved it to the closet. Then one day I noticed it had been pushed behind winter coats. Not hidden exactly, just no longer central. That mattered. She stopped apologizing before asking for seconds. She laughed during movies without covering her mouth. She still watched adult faces sometimes, but less often. Healing, I learned, is not a sunrise. It is a child forgetting for 3 whole minutes to be afraid. Daniel completed the parenting program. Every session, not once late. He took a full-time logistics job at a regional supply company. Steady hours, modest salary, no glamour, no pitch decks, no investors applauding words like scale and disruption. He rented a small apartment with plain furniture and a folding kitchen table. During one supervised visit, he brought a notebook and told Lily, "I wrote down what I learned this week." She looked skeptical. "From school, kind of," he read from the first page. "Consistency builds safety. Apologies are not repairs unless behavior changes. Children should not manage adult emotions." Lily listened. "Did you write that?" "Yes." "Did someone tell you to?" He smiled faintly. "Also yes." She considered him for a long moment. "Are you staying in one house now?" "Yes." "Does Vanessa live there?" "No." "Do I have to make her like me?" Daniel's face changed, and I saw pain move through him without becoming defensiveness. "No," he said. "You never did." Lily looked at her hands. "Okay, it was not forgiveness. It was a brick placed on level ground." At the annual review, Judge Cole evaluated reports from Mara Alvarez, Dr. Ward, the parenting program, and Lily's therapist. He noted measurable improvement under my guardianship and sustained effort from Daniel. Custody would transition to a shared arrangement pending continued compliance. Gradual, structured, conditional. The trust beneficiary suspension would remain in effect indefinitely. That was the public consequence. Daniel retained his role as father, but did not regain access to the trust. The courtroom was quiet when the order was entered. Not triumphant, not tragic, official. Daniel approached me afterward. "I am not asking for the money," he said. "Not anymore, I know." He hesitated. "I needed to lose it." His voice was low, stripped of performance. "I was hiding behind it." I nodded because anything else would have softened the truth into comfort, and comfort was not what either of us needed. At Lily's summer recital, Daniel sat in the back row. No phone out, no recording for social media, no captions, just listening. I sat 3 rows ahead, hands folded over the program, feeling Evelyn's absence beside me as sharply as if the empty chair had her name on it. Lily walked onto the small stage in a navy dress and lifted the violin to her chin. For one breath, she looked terrified. Then she found Daniel in the back, found me near the aisle, and settled. She played a simple piece, nothing grand but steady, clean, full of feeling that no longer sounded like an apology. When she finished, the applause was modest and real. She smiled not because she was performing happiness, but because something in her had held. Afterward, in the parking lot, she walked between us. She did not hold either hand. Not yet. Daniel did not push. I did not reach. That restraint felt like progress too. At his car, she turned and waved to me before getting in. No hesitation, no fear. Just a child moving from one safe adult to another, cautiously, imperfectly, but without the suitcase in her eyes. Daniel closed the car door gently, then looked across the roof at me. "Thank you," he said. I did not ask for what. Perhaps he did not know. Perhaps I did not either. The trust remains unchanged. Daniel's beneficiary status is still suspended. I may never restore it. That is not revenge. Revenge is simple. This is not simple. Money is a tool, and tools can build homes or cages depending on the hand that holds them. I will not hand Daniel a cage disguised as rescue. If Lily inherits one day, it will be protected in ways no adult can use to make her feel expendable. If Daniel continues rebuilding, he will do so without the narcotic of guaranteed wealth. That may be the only mercy left strong enough to matter. I was not a perfect father. I was strict. I valued discipline. I confused achievement with love more often than I want to admit. I taught Daniel how to defend himself with language, and perhaps I failed to teach him how to confess without collapsing. That is part of the record too. Justice without reflection becomes control. Reflection without action becomes weakness. Somewhere between those two is responsibility, and responsibility is rarely comfortable enough to feel righteous. The ending is not clean. Vanessa left. Daniel lost the company, the house, the illusion of himself he had spent years selling. Lily gained stability, but not innocence. I gained legal guardianship, then shared custody structure, then a house that feels less empty but more haunted by what had to happen inside it. My son and I speak now, but carefully. There are subjects we approach like damaged bridges. Some days I see the boy he was. Some days I see only the man who left a blue suitcase under a porch light. Both are true, and neither truth cancels the other. Sometimes, late at night, I still think of that first question. Grandpa, am I not family? I have answered it 100 ways since then, with court filings, bedtime routines, therapy appointments, violin practice, school lunches, and quiet rooms where nobody has to earn their place. But the question remains inside me, because a child should never have had to ask it. Daniel once thought the worst thing I could do was cut him out of the trust. He was wrong. The worst thing was making him stand in a life where money could no longer translate failure into delay. The worst thing was making him look directly at the child he had treated as negotiable and understand that she had been recording the truth long before any adult wrote it down. He survived it. Lily survived it. I survived it. But survival is not restoration. There is no return to the family we pretended to be. There is only the quieter work of becoming less dangerous to one another. There is a blue suitcase in a closet. There is a suspended trust clause. There is a father learning to show up without applause. There is a grandfather who now understands that silence can protect, but it can also delay. There is a child who plays violin with steadier hands and still sometimes looks toward the door before the last note fades. And there is the house in Ann Arbor, porch paint still peeling, maple tree still leaning east, rooms still holding the sound of people who loved badly, tried late, and learned that family is not proven by blood, captions, inheritance, or proximity. Family is proven by who comes back for the child on the porch before she learns to stop expecting anyone. The months when Lily lived with me under temporary guardianship were not filled with dramatic revelations every day. They were filled with smaller, more exhausting things, the kind of ordinary frictions that reveal the true shape of damage. She did not like closed doors at first. If I went into the bathroom and shut the door, she would call once from the hallway, not loudly, just enough to confirm the house had not emptied. When the washing machine buzzer sounded, she startled. When my phone rang after dinner, she watched my face before asking whether it was her dad. At school pickup, she stood slightly apart from the other children, backpack straps gripped in both hands, eyes scanning the curb with a discipline no 7-year-old should possess. Her teacher, Mrs. Laramie, spoke to me after the second week. She is doing well academically, she said, which is what teachers say before telling you what matters more. But she asks for confirmation about transitions. She wants to know who is coming, exactly when, and what happens if plans change. I thanked her, and she touched my sleeve lightly. She is not being difficult. I know, I just want to make sure the adults know. That sentence followed me home, the adults, the broad category of people who had failed to coordinate a child's sense of safety. At home, Lily and I made a calendar on the refrigerator. Blue stickers for school days, green for therapy, yellow for Daniel's visits, red for court dates, though I called them grown-up meetings. At first she checked it every morning and every night, then only every morning, then sometimes not at all. Progress was not sentimental, it was logistical. Stability entered through repetition before it reached the heart. I cooked badly but predictably. Pasta on Mondays, chicken soup on Wednesdays, pancakes on Saturday mornings shaped like circles, because I had no talent for animals no matter how many times she requested a rabbit. She began correcting me. Grandpa, that one looks like a shoe. Then it is a shoe pancake. Shoes are not breakfast. Not with that attitude. The first time she laughed freely at that, I had to turn toward the stove because the sound broke something open in me I was not ready to show. Daniel, meanwhile, moved through stages that were not as noble as later summaries would make them sound. Before acceptance came bargaining. Before bargaining came blame. Before blame came humiliation. He sent texts at midnight insisting Vanessa was under pressure and had been misunderstood. He sent emails copying his attorney, proposing a family-mediated resolution that restores normalcy without further reputational harm. He left a voicemail after the foreclosure threat became real, voice thick with what might have been alcohol or exhaustion, saying, "You always wanted me to fail so you could be right. I saved it because Cole told me to save everything. I listened once, then never again." The next morning he sent an apology for the voicemail, then followed it with 3 paragraphs explaining why his reaction was understandable given my escalation. That was Daniel then. Even regret arrived with footnotes. Vanessa's private pressure grew sharper as public appearances failed. She tried to contact Lily through a tablet app Daniel had forgotten to disable. Lily brought me the device one evening with the screen held outward as if it were hot. Vanessa had written, "I hope you know your daddy is very sad because grandpa is keeping you from us. Adults sometimes make mistakes when they are lonely." I read it twice, feeling the old cold anger return. Lily watched my face. Did I do something? No. Is dad sad because of me? No. I took a breath and forced my voice to remain even. "This message is not appropriate. I am going to give it to Cole and Mara." Lily looked relieved and frightened at the same time. "Will Vanessa be mad?" "She may be. What if dad gets mad because I showed you?" I sat beside her on the couch, not too close because she sometimes needed space before comfort. "You are never in trouble for showing an adult something that makes you feel bad or confused." She considered that with the seriousness of a judge. "Even if the adult says it is secret." "Especially then," she nodded slowly. "Another brick, another repair." That message mattered in court, not by itself but as part of the pattern. Mara described it as boundary confusion and emotional burden shifting. Vanessa's attorney called it a clumsy but loving attempt to maintain connection. Judge Cole asked whether Vanessa had completed any step-parent counseling or child trauma education. She had not. He asked whether she had apologized directly to Lily without reference to adult conflict. She had not. Vanessa, when finally required to speak, performed wounded dignity. She said she had entered the marriage with compassion, that Claire's memory occupied every room, that Daniel had been emotionally unavailable because guilt kept him tied to the past, and that Lily had been encouraged by me to reject her. It was a polished speech. Then Cole asked why, if she considered Lily part of the family, she had captioned a vacation without her as real family time. Vanessa's face hardened for half a second, so quickly some might have missed it. "I did not. It was social media," she said. "People are allowed to have captions." Judge Cole wrote something down. Vanessa saw him write and understood too late that dismissing cruelty because it was public did not make it harmless. Daniel's first genuine rupture with Vanessa happened after that hearing. He told me months later, not as confession exactly, more like a man describing the moment. A soundproof room lost power and he heard the machine inside. They were in the car outside the courthouse. Vanessa was furious, not shaken by Lily's distress, not worried about the judge's reaction, but furious that Cole had made her look bad. "That old man set me up," she said. "Your father is trying to humiliate me." Daniel said Lily had looked scared. Vanessa snapped, "Lily always looks scared. That is how she wins." He told me he sat there with his hands on the steering wheel and felt something inside him tilt. Not break, not yet, but tilt. For the first time, he heard Vanessa not as the wife he needed to defend, but as an adult speaking about his child with contempt. He did not leave her that day. People rarely leave the first day truth becomes audible, but he stopped repeating her sentences afterward. That mattered. The parenting program was not a redemption montage. Daniel hated it at first. He called it remedial fatherhood. He said sitting in a circle with men, ordered by courts to learn bedtime routines, was humiliating. I told him humiliation was not fatal. He hung up on me. Later, he admitted the first session asked each parent to describe a time their child felt unsafe because of their choices. Daniel said he spoke in generalities until the facilitator, a woman named Renee, stopped him and said, "You are describing circumstances. Try describing your daughter." He could not. Not in detail. Not beyond smart, sweet, resilient. Renee asked what Lily did when she was nervous. What food she avoided. What song she practiced when she wanted approval. Which stuffed animal mattered. What question she asked when she felt left out. He came home from that session and sat in his car outside his apartment for an hour. I knew facts about her, he told me later. I did not know habits. Claire knew habits. You knew habits. I knew how to post her. That kind of realization is ugly before it becomes useful. Daniel did not become humble all at once. He became quiet first, then irritable, then ashamed. Shame, when finally allowed to exist, made him unpredictable for a while. During one visit, Lily spilled juice on the table and immediately said, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," 3 times in a row. Daniel froze, and I saw the lesson strike him in real time. He reached for a towel slowly. "It is just juice," he said. His voice was careful, almost too careful. Lily watched him clean it. "Are you mad?" "No. Vanessa gets mad when things stain." He swallowed. "Vanessa is not here, but if she was..." He looked toward the observation window where Mara sat taking notes. He could have defended Vanessa. He could have said, "Do not talk about her that way." Instead he said, "Then I should have protected you from feeling like a spill mattered more than you." Lily did not respond, but she stopped apologizing. Mara wrote for a long time after that. Money pressure stripped Daniel faster than therapy did. The startup's collapse was not sudden. It was a public unraveling disguised as strategic pivot, until even the disguise became too expensive. First, the office lease was terminated. Then employees were moved to contractor status. Then contractors were unpaid. One former employee posted vaguely about founders who preach family culture while missing payroll. Daniel called me furious, not because the accusation was false, but because it was visible. "They do not understand what I was trying to build," he said. "Did you pay them?" Silence. "Not fully." "Then they understand enough." He hated me for that answer, and maybe he needed to. Fathers who have funded delusions do not get to demand gratitude when they stop. We had to sit inside the consequences together, neither of us innocent. The day the foreclosure finalized, Daniel went to the house alone. Vanessa had already taken what she wanted: clothes, jewelry, the espresso machine she claimed was hers. 2 abstract paintings purchased with money that should have gone to payroll. Daniel found Claire's old photo album in a cabinet where Vanessa had moved it years earlier. He called me from the empty living room. "There are pictures of Lily as a baby," he said. His voice sounded strange. "Claire wrote dates on the back. She did that. I forgot some of these." I heard pages turning. "There is one where Lily is asleep on my chest." He stopped. "I look happy." "You were. What happened to me?" It would have been easy to answer cruelly. Vanity happened. Vanessa happened. Money happened. Cowardice happened. But none of those were complete. And incomplete cruelty is still cruelty. "You started needing life to look successful more than you needed it to be honest," I said. He breathed into the phone for a long time. "I do not know how to fix that." "Start by not pretending you already have." Shared custody, when it finally came, did not feel like victory. It felt like releasing a repaired bird into weather. Lily wanted to go and did not want to go. Daniel wanted her there and feared failing. I wanted to trust him and could not fully. The first weekend she stayed at his apartment, I checked my phone too often. At 8:03, he sent a photo of the folding kitchen table with 2 plates of spaghetti and a small bowl of grated cheese. No faces, just proof of dinner. At 8:47, Lily called to say goodnight. "Dad burned the garlic bread," she said. Daniel's voice in the background said, "Lightly carbonized." She giggled. I sat in my quiet kitchen after the call ended and cried for the first time since the porch light night. Not from relief. Relief was too simple. I cried because so much had been required to produce one ordinary burned dinner. The final annual review did not erase the past. It placed guardrails around the future. Judge Cole kept the trust suspension, expanded shared custody, required continued therapy, and warned Daniel that consistency over years, not months, would determine whether legal oversight softened. A child's sense of safety is not restored by adult intention, he said. It is restored by repeated experience. Daniel nodded. Lily, sitting beside her court-appointed advocate, swung her feet slightly and drew tiny music notes in the margin of a paper cup. She was listening. Children always listen, especially when adults think legal language floats above them. After the recital that summer, when Daniel said thank you across the car roof, I nearly told him I was proud of him. The sentence rose naturally, dangerously, carrying all my old fatherly hunger to reward improvement and close the wound. I stopped it. Pride was not wrong, but it was too soon and too easy. Instead, I said, keep going. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I will, that was enough. Enough is a discipline too. Now, when Lily stays with me, she sometimes asks about Evelyn. Not in the mournful way she used to ask about Claire, but with curiosity. Would Grandma Evelyn have liked my violin? She would have cried even if you played badly. Is that good? With her, yes. We look at old photographs. Lily knows Claire's face. Daniel has put one photo back in his apartment. Not on a grand shrine, just on a bookshelf where Lily can see it without asking permission. Vanessa would have called that living in the past. I call it letting a child have all her rooms. I do not know what Daniel will become 10 years from now. I know better than to write endings while people are still alive. He may continue. He may relapse into image. He may one day rebuild something honest. He may remain a modest logistics manager who shows up on time, pays his bills, attends recitals, and learns that dignity can exist without applause. That would not be a small ending. In fact, it might be the largest one he is capable of earning. As for me, I keep the trust folder in the same drawer. I review it twice a year. The clause remains. My signature remains. Power should never be left unexamined, even when used for the right reason. Some nights I wonder whether Evelyn would say I went too far. Other nights I hear her voice more clearly than my own, saying what she said years ago about shame. Teach him to sit with it. Maybe that is what the trust did when love could not. It made him sit with the shame money had always helped him outrun. The blue suitcase is still in the closet. Lily has outgrown some of the clothes that were inside it that night. The rabbit remains, worn thinner now, one ear repaired by my clumsy stitching. Sometimes I see the suitcase when I hang up coats, and the sight still empties the room for a moment. A small object can hold an entire collapse. It can also hold the beginning of a boundary. There is no clean justice here. A child was hurt. A father was exposed. A grandfather used money as a shield and had to confront how easily a shield can become a weapon. A woman who never wanted the child left the story, but not the marks she made. A trust preserved assets, but could not preserve innocence. The law intervened, but law is slow, blunt, and incapable of tucking a frightened child into bed. So we do the rest ourselves, imperfectly. We make calendars, we answer phones, we burn garlic bread, we attend therapy, we leave photographs where children can see them. We stop calling abandonment a mistake when it is a pattern. We stop calling money love when it is control. We stop pretending children forget what adults find inconvenient. And when a child asks, "Am I not family?" we do not answer with captions, excuses, vacations, or gifts from Cabo. We come to the porch. We pick up the suitcase. We take her home. Then we make sure the adults who left her there understand that some doors, once closed behind a crying child, do not reopen to the same world.